Hey, Allana. Great
Hey,
to have
Matt.
you on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
So, Allana, we've known each other for probably 5-6 years now.
Yeah.
Worked on your initial amazing project, your home, and that's where we first met you.
That's
and then
correct.
You came on board and started designing with us for some of our clients. We've done some amazing projects together, and it's an honor to have you here to discuss your design gifts and your
Thank
processes.
you. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah, no, it's really fun. So first, tell me a little bit about who Allana is. Just every day.
I am every day.
Yeah.
That's a broad question, but I can answer it. Well, I would say first and foremost, I'm a creative, and it took me a while to get there and realize that. I think I've always been, and I also have a sister and brother my same age. I'm a triplet,
Yeah.
and we're all kind of creatives and
Yeah.
always have been, and our paths have ultimately led us back to that sort of life and interests, et cetera. But yeah, I didn't start in interior design in terms of my career. I started with an English degree, undergraduate, thought I might teach. And
Where'd you go to school?
I went to University of Wisconsin.
All right.
So yes, I'm a Badger.
There
oh
you
yeah,
go.
I betcha. So I went there thinking, was I going to do international relations? What was I going to do? Was I going to go study abroad and continue my German studies? And I just wasn't quite ready for it at that time. But I always loved English. I loved reading and writing. And so I ended up going to grad school after I got my English degree because, of course, the question was, what am I going to do with this degree?
English degree.
And so I thought I was going to teach middle school, high school English communications. And then I moved out to Colorado, and I spent some time in Alaska, actually, even before that, and I just fell in love with the mountains and the outdoors, and I had a good friend from college. And then I fell into high-tech sales of one sort or another. I sold computer peripherals. I sold data analysis software.
That's what you do with an English degree, isn't it?
Yes, that's what you do.
Sales. Yeah.
That's what you do. And so I did that for over a decade, and my heart was not in it. And I was doing some remodeling things on the side, and then after I got married to my husband in 2004, I bit the bullet and I went back for another bachelor's degree at Rocky Mountain College of Art and Design.
Nice.
And what I really enjoyed about their program was they were first and foremost accredited, but also they had a green design emphasis. And so that's what drew me there. And so, it was... It took me a little longer than I anticipated. There were a lot of studio classes, a lot of art history classes, of course, learning construction documents, building structures and systems, learning CAD, AutoCAD. So it was all worth it. And I finally knew I was where I needed to be.
I notice on your business card, you have several designations behind your design.
Yes.
So what are those?
Okay.
Because just curious.
Yeah. And I mean, it's a lot of acronyms, right?
Yeah.
And unless people are in the industry, and not even people in the industry, unless they're in design or building specifically. So the one is ASID, and it's Allied ASID. So ASID stands for American Society of Interior Designers.
Okay.
And when I went back to school, I got involved and became the student chapter president. I thought it would be a really good way to meet people in the industry and to network, et cetera. And also, I was a little bit of an older student. I was in my early 30s, so it wasn't my first time around. Yeah. And I thought, if there's anything maybe I can bring to some of the younger students in terms of the professional career I had already had and what kind of skills I had learned there that might be helpful in the design industry as well, I thought it would be a good place to, do that as well and perhaps maybe be a little bit of a mentor in some ways.
Okay.
And so it was just fulfilling on multiple levels. And so ASID is a professional organization that I'm still a part of. I haven't actually sat for it's called NCIDQ. Its qualifications. It tends to be a little more relevant in the commercial world, or in states, depending on the legislation. If people want to be able to potentially sign or stamp drawings. But there's a whole liability and whatnot that comes with that, for me as a sole proprietor isn't necessary.
Yeah.
So that's the first one. The second one is I am a lead AP, and that stands for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. And AP just stands for Accredited Professional. And then it says B, D, and C, which is Building, Design, and Construction. So when I first got into interior design, I was in the commercial world, and I worked for Oz Architecture here in Boulder.
Yeah, Oz is very well known.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed it, but it also helped me find the niche that I ultimately enjoy the most, which is residential design.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I eventually, when my husband and I moved to Austin for 10 years, from 2008 to 2018, we always intended to move back here. I decided to study and sit for that exam because the sustainable design practices have always been of interest to me. And so it's something that I still use. It depends on the project, of course, and the building design and construction is a little more widespread. Since I sat for the exam, so LEED comes through the USGBC, the U.S. Green Building Council. And since I sat for the exam, they have a designation for homes as well. Yeah. So it just depends. I think they need to make the program a little more affordable and to make it incentivize people to do more of that type of building. But the knowledge I gained was tremendous, and that I still use it here and there depending on the project. So,
that's awesome.
So those are the acronyms.
Yes, I saw that and I was like, okay, I don't know what those are, but it looks important. No.
It looks important.
So, with having been able to build your home was an honor, and it's like, wow, like I really got to see you bring your art and your craft to life through, what we built for you. And so I'd like to say, what is your preferred design style? Because I want to see if it aligns with, in my head, what we did for you. Oh,
interesting. So I always hesitate a little bit to answer this question, only because as a designer, I don't ever like to pigeonhole myself. Because sometimes, obviously, I have a website, and I think it's important from a marketing perspective to, you don't want things to be all over the place or your message to be all over the place. That being said, I do enjoy doing all kinds of different types of aesthetics. But for my personal aesthetic, I tend to lean towards a little more contemporary aesthetic, a little more eclectic aesthetic. I don't think you have to go down one avenue. And I think there's ways, and also it's so important to me that a house does not read like the latest trend, but that it really, you walk in and you feel, just by walking in, you can get to know who lives there. Yeah. And that's so important to me, that a house speaks to the occupants and not just the trends. I'm not anti-trend per se. I just think that I really like to get to know clients and who they are and what their story is, and bring that story into their home, because the home is such an important place for all kinds of things, for family, for respite, for, it's just it's a very personal place, obviously. And so.
Well, no, and as we walk through your house, there are those spaces that you're like, oh, that's Marsha's area of the home, and it reads Marsh, and then this is Allana's area, and it reads Allana. So, you did that with your place. It was a very interesting journey, and I might be jumping to different topics here, but your house, when we were there and building it, I'm like, what is she doing? Like, this is outside of the box. And what I love is you're able to go outside the box, and then when you see the final product, you're like, wow, like, why even doubt? I was like, why is she doing this colored door? And then you see it, and everything comes together, and you're like, wow. It really blew me away.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. But, credit to Built by Krueger. Obviously, we interviewed multiple home builders. And you guys stood out for a variety of reasons, but I really liked your communication style from up front. You were very honest and clear about what the expectation would be. We talked about timeline, and those things were all really important to me. And you delivered as well, because sometimes builders may say one thing, but then you get another. And so we had such a great experience collaborating.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing too. I think collaboration is so huge. We don't do it alone, right? A designer can't do it alone.
Yeah.
Builders can't do it alone. Architects, I don't think, can do it alone. And when you get people in the industry that are all on the same page and really want to bring that collaboration and everyone's talents together, that's when I think the best things happen.
Absolutely. I mean, I think your home is phenomenal. So,
well, thank you very much. And it's funny you bring that up about, well, yes, you were doing this or that, and I wasn't sure it was going to work or land. But this brings me to something that I think, which ultimately, when I went back to school and I realized this is my passion, this is what I really enjoy doing, is that I probably always had a little bit of that there in terms of the creative side. Yeah. And I heard an interview not too long ago on NPR. It was with Terry Gross on Fresh Air, and it was Temple Grandin. I don't know if you know who she is, but she was a famous animal. Well, she was an animal rights activist, but also I don't know if it's veterinary. It's like animal, I can't think of the actual area, but it's veterinary type work and animal welfare type work. But there was a movie made about her. She was being interviewed, and she's on the spectrum a bit, but she was talking about ways of thinking and that she's a picture thinker. And I never thought about this before, but as she was saying it, I just had this light bulb moment, and I'm like, that is how I am and how I've always been. I think in pictures, and even if someone's telling me a story about either a place they've traveled or what, I'm visualizing being there. I'm visualizing the people, even if I haven't met them. And I do the same thing with spaces and homes. I can walk in and I'm visualizing and seeing it before it's even done. Mm-hmm. And, that's a big reason why I'm like, I need to go back. That's why I was like, I need to go back to school and just bite the bullet and do this, because this is what I love. And, this brings me joy. And, and it put that sort of thinking that I've always had. Mm-hmm. I'm not, which is, another reason why I'm not an accountant, for example. Some people think in numbers, so.
No, that's interesting, because I'm probably more a process thinker.
Okay.
Like, you'll tell me about the picture, and I'm like, how are we going to get there? How are we going to deliver that? Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. So I'm like, wait, she's painting her trim black. Okay, let's see how this goes. And how's that going to get to the end result? And then you're like, wow. So, it's fun. It's fun working with you. And we have some other projects we'll talk about where we get to see that. But
great.
So one of the things about your process and being a picture thinker, and I've seen you work with our clients through the process. Tell me how you like to guide your clients through the design process, to help them make decisions, increase their trust in you. Mm-hmm. And just kind of, how do you do that in your profession?
Yeah. So for me, I think there's maybe a template or a format that most designers use in some way, shape, or form. But for me, I would say, for starters, the most important thing for me is I at first really need to sit down and get to know my clients. Who are they? Where are they from? What are their loves and interests? What's their life story? There's something about place too. Like, obviously, if they're living here in Colorado, why? What brought them here? Another thing I love to talk with clients about is, do they travel? Where have they traveled? So many people are inspired by place, right? Yeah. Or people move to a place. Sometimes, especially since I've moved back here, I've had clients that either grew up here or lived here or moved here for a specific reason. All of these things oddly enough, or maybe not oddly enough, play a role in terms of what sort of direction our design and aesthetic takes. And then, of course, there's the obvious questions, kind of the one you asked me, what is your personal design preference, right? Because while I do have a lot of clients that lean a little more contemporary, and especially it seems design has, maybe trended that way per se, but it's also regional. So, especially like if you go out onto the East Coast and, where there are places where there's a lot more older homes. So, so that's first and foremost. And then from there, I like to create what I call digital visual design boards. So it's kind of like taking those pictures that are in my head about what this feel is going to be and what the design direction is going to be for the home, and putting it into that sort of visual concept. Occasionally I will do the rendering and the 3D stuff, but mostly the architects do that, and especially now with Revit, which I personally don't know and I don't need to. This is one of those things where I like to kind of stay in my lane. I did when I was back in school. There were some students that I thought, gosh, you might want to consider architecture just because of the way they thought about and processed things, and especially if they loved doing AutoCAD, and that sort of, it's its whole own thing, right? And so,
and that's not your love,
and that's not my love, and which is another reason also for me personally why I veered towards, especially when I started my own business, more residential type projects. I just felt like there was a more personal, tangible touch at times to it, and that's really where my passion is, because to me, there's nothing quite like helping someone, make their home their dream home, if you will, or their perfect vision of a home. And it sometimes even do things that they didn't even know they wanted to do themselves, and they just fall in love with it.
Yeah.
That's the goal, right? Having clients fall in love with their home, whether it's a retrofit or remodel or a scrape and build or whatnot. And that's the best feeling.
Yeah, it is.
So
after you do your design boards, keep going through the process take the clients through.
Right.
Like on a resi build.
Right. Well, most projects you have to address budget. Yeah. That is just reality. And then we start gathering, once we've gotten the digital visual design boards honed in and keyed in, then we start going into, tangible, touching, feeling. I start to gather samples of the finished materials. I might get more specifics. We might go to a showroom. That I say might because it depends on the client. Some people can get very overwhelmed. These days, showrooms have a lot of choices and options, and that can be overwhelming to a lot of people. So sometimes it's easier for me to bring products to them or samples to them. So that's kind of, the next process. And then, of course, I didn't mean to slide over budget, but, we do talk about that. And, and then I give them kind of a rundown of, what the various stages are going to be, So, and
one thing that I think you really understand the construction process and understand what builders go through and what the steps are that we have to do. And you're very prepared for us when we get to those points, right? You're like, hey, the team is going to need this. The team is going to need this. Here's this drawing. So that construction, your knowledge of how it goes together is a compliment. So,
thank you. I mean, I attribute that to going back and getting another bachelor's, quite honestly, because I did sit through building structures and systems, and I did sit through CAD, CAD classes. Yeah. But also, my experience working with builders and specifically residential builders and understanding that. I also like to help the builders in the sense that I'm helping set realistic expectations for clients,
Yes.
and helping them understand the process, because there can be some pain involved, and it's always nice. We live in an instant gratification society, so of course, anyone that does a home, they want to get it done. They want to move back in, but anything that's worthwhile, it takes time. And then there's also things out of our control. There's the whole supply chain issue, purchasing, where are things coming from. And so I also like to, on all my projects I do now, and this is something I learned over time, but organization is very important.
Yes.
And so
Preach it.
I do a spec list, by room. And sometimes I even color code it. And I'm not a spreadsheet person. That's like more my husband's and math people. But this is a place where spreadsheets are very helpful because you can update things. You can have selections made, and then something becomes unavailable. It's either discontinued. You might have chose it, and then when it comes time to purchasing, you need to pivot. So you always need to, have kind of a plan B. And I also try to prepare clients for that as well. The good news is we do live in a society where there are quite a few options.
Yeah.
So it doesn't become it doesn't kill the project per se. They're just setting that expectation though from the beginning, I think really helps the process along, so that when you hit bumps, which you will, then it's much easier to get over them and move past and continue.
It's key for a builder to have a designer on the team. And the designer really brings that helping set expectations, but also it helps translate what the customer wants into a buildable form, right? That's really a key role that you provide to us. Because we can be going through this and a client will say, oh, I want this. And we're like, we built this. And they're like, no, you built something other than this. And we're like, no. And the designer is like, we've learned you don't do it that way. The designer really helps paint the picture for the builder of what needs to be executed. So I think that's a key role of a designer, being able to understand the client, understand the decision processes, the constructability processes, and helping set the right expectations for the project team. So
right. And then also, of course, because clients are human beings, like we all are, minds can be changed or so I try to, because obviously change orders are no fun, and I try to really set expectations so that we can avoid a lot of change orders, and we can avoid those type of things, unnecessary delays per se, right? So having all those in-depth conversations up front and being as detailed as possible, so the expectation is set, there's no surprises, everyone's on the same page. And then also there's a little bit of, and I think builders do it as well, but as designers, sometimes, especially if you're working with couples or, people, we all have to sometimes help each other and be therapists at times if people, have difficulty either making a decision, or if it's a couple and you have to try and get an aesthetic that they both can agree on. Of course, you can have areas in a home that are designated for those people, but I haven't ran into a situation where I have had couples that are too extreme, fortunately.
Yeah.
I've heard, but I haven't ran into that myself. But
absolutely. A designer and a builder and an architect, when you have these customers, you are a therapist. We're counselors. We're navigating them along this journey, and it's helping them overcome or understand, and we try and make it enjoyable. But sometimes it can be hard.
Well, right. It's a big life thing, right? Whether it's a major remodel or it's a new build, these are big events in people's lives, and they're personal, and so they're treated as such, and therefore sometimes, yes, we have to come in and we have to be the ones, and then, we all have that in our lives, I think, in some way, shape, or form.
To pivot.
Okay.
What is your least favorite type of design?
Oh, boy.
Come on now. Offend some people here.
Offend some people. Okay. My least favorite. I would say it's not so much an aesthetic as it is a lack of variety, where everything is matchy-matchy, everything's one tone and the same color. I believe that color is huge, and I think used in the right places and the right ways, it's really important. So I guess I would say this. Here's an example. Even though I love restoration, some things about restoration hardware, I love their lighting. I think they make fantastic lighting, among other things. But that's the one thing they stand out to for me. For years, and I think they still are doing it, their catalogs were beige and gray. Gray for a long time, when gray, everyone was doing gray this, gray that. And then beige, and now kind of gray beige, and now kind of, and there would be a lot of people who are like, oh, well, I want that look. And then you would get to know them, and they would maybe have fantastic art with all kinds of color in it. And it's like, let's talk about who you are. Is this really you? And and sometimes people realize maybe that isn't exactly what I thought. And maybe I'm just, they've marketed things so well that they thought that's what I want. So I guess kind of a bland, matchy-matchy.
Yeah.
That's like my least favorite.
Yeah.
Or anything that's overly themed.
Overly themed.
Overly themed. I'm not against theme, but when it's like over the top, you know?
Like a tiki bar in the house? No.
Maybe. Like if it's like, or if the whole house is tiki.
Yeah.
It's like, we really like, and it's like, you can like that, but everything doesn't have to be that, right? Yeah. So I think there's just a way of elevating things where you can have exactly that, but you can elevate it without having it be overkill, if you will.
Thanks for listening to Built by Insights. Tune in next Friday to hear the second episode.